Thursday was called Holy, and we were called to serve. Friday, despite its focus on suffering and death, was described as good. And tonight, we sing Alleluia as we rejoice in the resurrection of the Lord. As a newly ordained priest, I was on call one night at the local hospital. I went in to see a patient in intensive care. A man was dying, and I was asked to anoint him. I prayed for the unconscious man and waited until he was declared dead. The heart monitor just went flat. I then spoke with his widow and went home. The next morning, I received a call from the man's pastor, who asked me if I recalled the anointing. I said, "Oh yeah, I anointed him. When is the funeral scheduled?" "Oh, no funeral for him," the pastor said. I wondered what he meant. And then he explained that when the funeral director went to the hospital to pick up the body, with the sheet over the head, he noticed the patient's chest going up and down. He was alive. When I went back to the hospital, I went into the ICU, and there was the patient, sitting up in the same bed in which he was declared dead, and eating a huge breakfast. "Good morning," I said. "Good morning," he replied. I said, "You were pretty sick last night." "So they tell me," the patient replied, "but I feel great today." There was a medical explanation for what happened, and I won't go into all that. But you can imagine the roller coaster of emotions that the wife went through, making funeral plans one minute and then being told her husband was alive the next. As a matter of fact, if my memory is correct, he lived for 3 or 4 more years. The reaction of the wife can only hint at what must have been going through the minds of the disciples and the women who went to the tomb. They knew that Jesus had died and was buried in the tomb. They watched him die. Now they had reports that he was alive. For the patient, it was a resuscitation. For Christ, it was resurrection, a transformed life. And as we will hear over the coming weeks, his followers didn't always recognize him right away. They had to be called by name, as was Mary, or recognize him in the breaking of the bread, as at Emmaus. Easter is not simply the retelling of an event of history. It's a promise for the future. And it applies to all of us here. Easter points to our own resurrection. Easter literally changes the horizon of our existence, since we now believe that life continues in some fashion beyond the grave. It's the power of Christ's resurrection that enables us to be transformed through death into new life. Easter is also meant to impact our lives here on earth. We are called to be Easter people, people who see hope in the face of every person, hope in the face of every event, even when that event is death. Easter does not mean that there is never pain or difficulties, far from it. Remember, even Christ had his Good Friday. But we are part of a community that says that life only makes sense if we profess belief in a God who never abandons us, a God who walked with us on earth, a God who died and rose for our sake, a God who loves us. Yes, Thursday was holy, Friday was good, and today and every day is an Alleluia of joy for the ones who believe.